Hello friends, and thank you so much for joining me here at Non-Toxic Home. As always, I'm coming at you from our non-toxic homestead. Today we are discussing some of my favorite sources, both online and on paper, for information in regards to homesteading, animal husbandry, foraging, gardening, trees, all of these sorts of things. I've got a whole pile of books to share with you. I've got some online resources to share as well. And let's just get going because there's a lot to share here. One thing that I need to say before we get going is don't follow the crowd. All right. The popularity of an opinion, belief, or practice is not indicative of accuracy, being humane. For example, the most popular method of processing backyard chickens is utterly inhumane, and talk to any veterinarian and they'll confirm that that is indeed the case. There are so many things that are popular for people to do, but either they aren't necessary, so they're spending a lot of money, they're spending a lot of time, it's not necessary, or they're actually harming both the soil life and the reptilian life around it. They're harming themselves, they're harming their animals, they're harming their plants, and they have no idea because few people actually obtain and exercise discernment in regards to most topics these days. Let's just be honest here. So ignore propaganda, experiment. Once you realize that we are all programmed by society to live in this nice, neat little box. Once you realize that, and then you say, no, that's not okay. I don't accept that. And you don't only say, I'm going to step outside the box, but you say, I don't recognize that there is a box for me anymore. And so that is how you choose to live your life. It is so freeing. It is incredible. And you will find success in your endeavors, whatever they may be. You'll find much joy and pleasure in what you do. You'll feel much freer. And yes, there are going to be failures, of course, but that's part of the joy of being a human being, is the opportunity that we have to experiment, to do trials, and to fail. And with the world and the state in which it is, if you aren't doing these sorts of things now, as far as gardening and foraging and learning about these things during this time, there will come a time at which it's too late for you to learn. And so why not just start now, in my opinion. All right, so the lies are so pervasive regarding gardening and raising animals, it is unreal. For example, the common narrative is that tomatoes cannot be grown in compacted clay soil. Well, I've done that. Also, you can't plant seeds in compacted clay soil and have any germination. Well, I've done that. And I've gotten tomatoes, squash, I don't even know what other, peppers, I don't even know what other things. Also, you can't garden on a hill. Okay, yeah, you can. I do. I have. Many people have. Lots of people in the world live in areas where there isn't flat land. And yeah, of course you can garden on a hill. Don't be silly. Also, the narrative is that you can't transplant so many things like carrots. If you go to our website, we've got a post on winter sowing, SOWING, that you can search for. Got lots of information, multiple methods that you can try for winter sowing. There is no one right way or wrong way. And this is something that I need to stress for you. We are all different in what our physical capabilities are. We're all different in the financial investment that we can make in ourselves, in our endeavors, in gardening supplies, all of these sorts of things. Many things can be done for free, but you have to remember that there's an industry behind almost every piece of information that exists today. And so when you consider that and recognize that, okay, most books aren't going to be published because most really, really, truly honest books aren't going to be published because they would destroy an entire industry if the truth got out. once you recognize that, then you can read everything through that lens. It doesn't mean that some of these books aren't amazing, because the books that I'm sharing with you are the best ones. I've got a couple of other piles of ones that I'm not sharing, believe it or not. The more that I personally experiment with things, the more propaganda I demolish. It is just truly incredible. For example, rabbits and chickens, the narrative is that you got to feed them pellets or they're going to die. They're not going to get the proper nutrition. They'll die. You'll kill them if you don't feed them commercially marketed pellets. That couldn't be farther from the truth. We've fed pellets previously, and we've not fed pellets, and everybody's actually healthier without the pellets. And if you look at the ingredients on the pellets, you'll find that there's a lot of chemicals in the pellets. So shocker, shocker, shocker. Industry wants you to believe and wants you to make decisions based on fear rather than fact. And so you got to be very careful with the information that you take into consideration when you're making decisions. Also, don't listen to master gardeners. Do you know where their information comes from? If you are a master gardener and you obtain your master gardener certification here in our state of Indiana, then you got your certification via Purdue. Do you know who funds Purdue? Do you know where their funding comes from for their master gardening program? Because you might want to look into that, because it's Big Agriculture and Big Chemical that funds that program at Purdue. And so your information as a master gardener from Purdue University, including in regards to organic crop cultivation, is going to be from a lens of chemicals. Buy. You need to buy this or your plants will die. You need to do this or your plants will die. Most of the research that's been conducted on crops is not for the actual gardener. It's for the huge farmer that is starting with poor soil and encouraging poor soil and not feeding the soil and not feeding the plants properly. Their focus is never on the soil, hardly at all. And organic has been taken over by corporations, and that was a concern back in the 1960s when it was emerging as a valid movement. The chemical movement actually started here in the United States in the late 1800s, as well as in Europe. So it's been around for a while. They're pretty good at their propaganda by now. So if you are into permaculture or natural building, and if you're looking for natural options, for example, for controlling some kind of pest on a fruit tree, there's all sorts of information on permies.com, permies.com. It's free. You don't have to sign up for an account to hang out and read things. I've gleaned a lot of information from there. Permies is just a forum for people who are doing it. They are growing stuff, they're raising animals, they are building naturally with adobe, and they're experimenting with cob and all of these other things, and then they're sharing their experience with others for free. So you don't have to buy a bunch of books in order to learn about permaculture. Permaculture has been corporatized to an extent as well. If you look at the price of a lot of permaculture books, some of the most lauded books are over $150 for, I believe it's a 2-book set. And of course I never bought that because that's way out of my budget. That's way out of my league. And I was able to get the information that I needed from the books that I have and from online. As far as chickens, if you want to raise chickens, I do not have a book to recommend for chickens. And also, I actually do not recommend raising chickens right now because the war on livestock is real. The bird flu, which is clearly classic avian microwave sickness. All right. If you search for 5GER or 5G on our Odyssey channel, and actually on YouTube as well, you'll find that I did tons of videos in 2020 sharing what was happening, what I was witnessing, both in my body as far as what the chickens were experiencing that we had, which by the way, all have passed away except for one now. And we've got other newer chickens. And then Also, the pollinator population just went boom overnight when that first SpaceX launch at the end of April occurred. And then with every recurring launch after that, there have been visible impact here on our rural property. So I don't recommend chickens because of the huge war that's on meat with them right now, and the bird flu issue, which of course is microwave sickness. But also they're being poisoned in multiple other methods as well. But if you do want to get chickens, go to backyardchickens.com. They also talk about rabbits on there and some other animals as well. And these are people who are actually doing it. There's going to be varying opinions there, but it's typically experience derived rather than a corporate narrative that is telling you what to do. As far as gardening goes, I do have some books that I'll be sharing with you, but I practice a very unique method of gardening. I am still not well as far as health goes. Nothing compared to how it was before, but I have different issues now. I have not been able to leave our property since early June of 2019 because of how toxic this world has become. And I never know how I'm going to feel from one day to the next. And so I practice gardening that allows me grace with timing of things. And so if you look at our winter sowing post, then I share some of the ways that I do so via using glass cloches, for example, which I just bought from, there's glass lampshades with a hole in the top, purchased from Habitat for Humanity Restore for cheap. And I think we bought 75 or so. So we've got a lot of them, and I use them. And you can also use plastic. You can also use other methods as well to mimic the greenhouse effect without the expense of a greenhouse. So there's that. But one of my favorite authors, let me find it here, is Seth Holzer, and he has a book here, Seth Holzer's Permaculture. And he lives, I want to say it's in Austria, and I haven't read this book for quite some time. I did read it, I think 2 or 3 or maybe even 4 times in recent years. And he trained as an arborist and got a certification, and then he went to do his first job, which was some good-sized orchard. And he did exactly what he was told by the industry and by the experts, and it killed everything. And so he had to pay for that, understandably so. And after that, he realized, okay, well, everything I learned was a lie. Basically, I got to do things my way. I got to observe nature as I learned to do so as a child and respond accordingly and listen to nature. And so that is what I do. I listen to nature. I observe and respond accordingly. I focus on soil health. I do not till ever. I do not cultivate. I keep a cover on the soil as much as possible. Now, right now, for example, it is spring, and so I do have 3 long garden length beds that are currently without any mulch on top. My mistake. One has compost on top. That, of course, I produced here. And I do not screen my compost. I don't do any of that stuff. It's not 100% perfectly complete compost that I put on there. You don't have to do things perfectly. Do things the best that you can. Hope for the best, and experiment. Because the only thing that we know for sure about our weather and our going forward is that things are going to continue to be crazier and crazier and crazier. And as they have been here in recent years. I won't get deep into that sort of topic because some people will just freak out about it. But you can explore our website and our previous videos for the research we've done on all those sorts of topics. But the fact is that weather will continue to get crazier and crazier. And that's by design. That's not accidental. And it's certainly not my fault, because I'm not a multinational corporation. Anyways, but chemicals are thrown at us from all angles right now. I know some people say, well, the only way you can truly grow clean produce is to grow it in a greenhouse. We don't have a greenhouse. But even if you did, so you would still have to filter the water, and you'd still end up with heavy metals, etc., in your produce and in the soil because of what's being sprayed in the skies. You can't get around that. There's nothing you can do about the chemicals that are being dumped in our skies. And besides that, you've got industrial waste that's flying through the air from everywhere, from all across the world. And, it impacts what happens on another continent. Eventually will make its way over here to where we live. And so you can't protect against everything. You just have to do your best and hope for the best. And be willing to experiment, be willing to fail, be open to failure, accept failure as a learning opportunity rather than something to get depressed about. My method of gardening is to keep the soil under cover as much as possible. And I used to watch lots of Back to Eden gardening videos. You can go to YouTube and search for those. There are tons of them on there where Paul Gauci walks people through and answers lots of questions about his Back to Eden garden out in Washington State here in the United States. He is a man of faith, and I really love his approach, and I have basically adopted that approach mostly as well. I mean, there are some things that I don't do that he does, like screening the compost, and I'm sure it's best to screen the compost. It probably is, but I have limited energy. I have to be very intentional with what I invest my energy and my time into. So he basically encourages mimicking creation. Like, he goes out into the woods and said, okay, well, this is how nature works. This is how it was designed to work. So why am I trying to fight nature? One of the things that my husband and I focus on and try to encourage clients to do is to avoid fighting nature. Nature hates monocultures, and the terrible large monoculture farms are an abomination to nature. And so, of course, they have to poison the plants and the soil and the environment around with chemicals, because that's the only way they can beat nature temporarily. If you are setting yourself up with a monoculture such as a yard full of only grass, then you're setting yourself up to fight nature eternally. And so rather than doing that, I appreciate nature. I use the knowledge that if I put mulch down, the earthworms are going to come and they're going to make some amazing soil for me. I utilize that to my benefit. As far as if you're chemically sensitive, where to buy books, local bookstores obviously are going extinct. So obviously that could be an option for you. I will link below to Amazon, but I can't tolerate any books from there myself because of the chemicals that they use in their warehouses. Also, I've bought some on eBay in the past, but that was quite some time ago. I usually order from Barnes & Noble for the most part, except for example books that are published by Chelsea Green. I will purchase directly from them. All right, so let's get into the books. Besides Seth Holzer's book here, Seth Holzer's Permaculture, his method that he discusses is the STEM method, which is my method. Severe, total, utter neglect. If a plant doesn't want to grow here on our property, then I don't want to force it. if it's unhappy, then I do what I can to try to make it happy. For example, let me see where that book is at down here. Here we go. The Regenerative Grower's Guide to Garden Amendments. There are some things in here that I would not use. I can't remember what it's called, but there's a thing that they make, IMO. The IMO is, I'm sure that it's great for the microorganisms. I'm sure it does work. I believe that assertion. And if that's something that you want to do, then that's fine. But it uses, it requires a lot of things like brown sugar and some different types of grain like brown rice. And it does specify to use organic brown rice and things like that. But using the amount that would be required would be very expensive. And so I don't do that. But I do, there are some other recipes in this book, The Regenerative Grower's Guide to Garden Amendments. And there's a lot of interesting science that they share in here. They talk about what your plant really needs. Like, your plant really needs good water, not bad water. Now, water is a difficult topic because water from your tap is going to be toxic, generally speaking. It's going to have chlorine and things in it that your plants are not going to like. So if you water and the water goes down through mulch acts as a water filtration system. And so that will help filter things out for your plant. That's one way to proceed with it. Also, zeolite, which you can buy sweet PDZ from your local farm co-op or whatever. And that's what I do. This like 25-pound bag or something like that. I don't know what the pricing is now because inflation is just out of control. But I have in the past thrown down sweet PDZ because that helps absorb heavy metals, which of course are being thrown down and spewed down at us from above. And I don't know. No, actually that did help because there's one year when it was very clear that my plants had aluminum toxicity. And of course my soil wasn't high in aluminum. There's no reason for that. It used to be a woods here. We took a woods and made it a homestead. And if you want to call it a homestead, I wouldn't even call it a homestead. But the fact is that the sweet PDZ or zeolite did seem to help with that. So that's another thing you can use with water. We do collect rainwater, and I understand the problems inherent with rainwater. Rainwater is not clean as it should be. It's not pure as it should be. However, I listen to our animals, and our animals prefer rainwater over filtered water from our house, even that's gone through our indoor filters. And they also prefer it over my distilled water, which I drink distilled water, which tells me that for them it's healthiest. And so if it's healthiest for them to drink rainwater, then it's healthiest for my plants to have rainwater as well. So that's just something to consider. All right, so if you're looking for just a general book with lots of stuff in it, this book here, the Encyclopedia of Country Living, there's so much information in this book. It is packed. Now look at this. See how small the words are? It's huge. The sheer number of topics in this book is incredible. And this was written by Carla Emery. And the one that I have here is the 40th anniversary edition. I think there is a newer edition, which I obviously I don't have. And I probably wouldn't recommend it because a lot of times what I've noticed lately is that the newer editions, a lot of times to bring in more corporate propaganda. And I think that's probably necessary in order for them to be published again. So there's so much information in this book. It is incredible. I cannot recommend this book enough. I will link to it on Amazon and I'll link to it on eBay as well. I don't know that there's an online digital download of it, but if there's one book that I could recommend, it would be that one. with as far as being comprehensive in information. Another book that I debated about sharing it. I wasn't sure, but I decided to go ahead and share it, is The Self-Sufficient Life and How to Live It. It is also a decent sized volume, but again, not what I would recommend most. But it has a lot on specific things that you can grow and a lot of illustrations in it. I don't agree with a lot of things in the book. There are some outdated discussions of some chemicals that used to be considered safe as far as organic certification or whatever goes. But it is a popular book. Said over 500,000 copies sold. That's a lot. But I do like the book. All right, so let's see here. Trying to be semi-organized here. One book that I really like that I haven't read, I don't know how far I got in it, but it has a lot of different things in it as well. It's got with animals, it's got developing a water supply, it's got building with brick, it's got how to can, it's got different grasses, energy sources like solar and all those sorts of things. And by the way, I do not recommend solar power because they are shielding the sun, and they are it's public record. The technocrats are happy to tell you, hey, we're shielding the sun. It's got about wilderness camping in here, purifying water, canoeing and kayaking, soap making, metalworking, hooked rugs, the ancient science of herbal medicine, all sorts of wonderful. It's just a really great source of information. I do recommend this book. It's a complete guide to traditional skills, and of course I'm big on traditional skills here because I can't buy a lot of things that most people can buy because they're toxic. All right, another really great book by Toby Hemingway, who passed away, I want to say it was 2019, I think it was. Gia's Garden. This is for home scale permaculture, and this book, there's so much valuable information in it about growing a food forest. It's about creating plant guilds, and there's a whole list of plants that are perennials that you can grow rather than struggling with annuals every year, which I opt for perennials as much as I possibly can. It talks a lot about soil life. It treats the garden as an ecosystem, looks at keyhole beds. It talks about conserving water in the landscape so that it just doesn't leave your property. Building and maintaining soil fertility and structure and all of these other things. It is a great resource. There's a lot of wonderful information. It's been a while since I read this, and so there's probably something in it that I wouldn't agree with now, because as you learn and gain more discernment, exercise more discernment, then there are going to be more things that you previously believed that you realize, oh, well, that was just corporate propaganda. That was just a lie. I was believing that. And so just be gentle with yourself. Just say, okay, well, I was believing a lie, and now I know the truth, and yay, I'm glad I know the truth now. What matters is what you know to be the case now. It doesn't matter that you were deceived about something previously. If you live in a woods and you're and you want to produce stuff from your woods, especially gardening in the shade, growing firewood, all these sorts of things. Farming the Woods is a good one for that. And it's an integrated permaculture approach to growing food and medicinals in temperate forests. And there is a lot of good information as far as that. Like maple sugaring, fruits and nuts that you can get from the forest. Talks about acorns and all sorts of other things. Basically agroforestry. It just has a lot of information. If you live in a woods, like we do. If you don't live in a woods, then it's completely irrelevant to you. Another decent book is The Resilient Farm and Homestead. Basically, the thought is, well, the weather is crazy pants, and so we need to be able to bounce back and deal with crazy pants weather in a permaculture fashion. And so there's a lot about perennial plants. There's a lot about resiliency. They talk about scything, which we do have a scythe. You want a European scythe, by the way, not an American scythe. And I haven't actually put my scythe together yet. And they're very expensive. The real ones, the real scythes are, I think mine was $300 or something like that. But it will be wonderful once I have it done. And so these guys here, actually this guy, Ben Falk, that wrote this book, The Resilient Farm and Homestead, he seemed to have a lot of money, quite frankly, to do as he pleased. Apparently he's an architect. I would not trust anything about architecture from him, because look right there. Okay, if he's an architect, you should know you don't allow plants to grow on your buildings unless you want mold and insect problems. So that's an issue as far as I'm concerned. There a lot of talks about, pretty much everything talks about climate change. All right, which yes, things are different. The climates have always been changing. That's nothing new, and it's certainly not my fault. But there's a lot here about pasture reclamation. They've tried different animals here on their homestead, and they experimented with it, and then they share what worked, what didn't, that sort of thing. We've got like 5 more books left. All right, hang in there, friends. All right, here we go. This is a really good book. I'm halfway through it now, about The Winter Harvest Handbook by Elliot Coleman. And he has some other books as well. I have one of his other books, I can't remember which one it is, that is it's focused more. The other book that I'm looking at is more focused on production as money, as a source of income. So I'm not looking at it as a source of income. I just want to grow food and such. And this still does have a lot of that sort of information in it. That wouldn't be for you or me. And he does till. Please don't till. That is not something I would recommend. I recommend no till. But he also says, we're going to try different things, do what work. He encourages experimentation, which I very much appreciate. And he and his family and their employees have experimented with a number of greenhouse designs, and then are sharing the results of their experimentation. They experiment with, this specific book is focused on the winter harvest, and he lives in Maine. So Canadian friends, this guy's up where it's cold, and American friends and everybody else, this guy is up where it's cold. And I don't believe it's this book. I think it's the other book that talks more about the history of no, there is, yeah, it is this book where he talks about the history of various winter growing things. Like this, what I just showed was, I believe, in Paris, if I remember right. And there's some interesting information as to the things that were done in the late 1800s, and that suddenly we've just forgot about, like, as was foretold. We wouldn't remember anything. We apparently cannot learn from previous generations, can't even learn from what happened a year ago or yesterday, let alone from previous generations. So this, if you are interested in growing under cover, such as in a greenhouse, or figuring out row covers for the winter that you can grow under, things like that. This is a good book for that. And he also shares his favorite, like what has been successful for them to grow. I've already mentioned, he talks about greenhouse design. He talks about weed control. I mean, there are things that I disagree with in every book, I think. That's just the fact of the matter. Because a lot of people aren't aware of toxicity. And he actually contradicts himself in the 2 books that I have of his. In one of them, he says, you should do a soil test. And then the other one, he says, soil tests are bunk. And I think that he just hasn't updated the one book, because soil tests are bunk. Let's see here. Rabbits. I have one book on rabbits that you might consider. Raising pastured rabbits for meat. Now, you don't have to raise pastured rabbits. We don't. You don't have to raise pastured rabbits to get a lot out of this book. This book is a lot just from somebody, or actually I think it's a couple people wrote. No, I guess it's Nikki Carangello. But it's got information on just about everything in regards to rabbits. It talks about alternative feeds for rabbits, which is good. As far as we go, our rabbits, I let them eat some food scraps. I get grass and dock leaves, and they love dock leaves and they love fresh grass. They eat a lot of hay, which is carefully sourced from a local farm that is spray free. They always have access to oats and sunflower seeds. And we tried a colony approach with 2 different groups, 2 different sibling groups, and it didn't work for either one. Now, some people have great success with rabbit colonies. We did not, but that doesn't mean that you won't. And one of the things that is discussed in this book is that there is no one-size-fits-all approach for rabbits. I do not recommend keeping them in the teeny tiny little cages. I consider that inhumane personally. Send us an email if you want a video of our setup. It's not what most people would consider to be the most efficient thing, but we have relationships with the rabbits, and it seems to work well for us. All right, so lastly, we're going to look at foraging books. If you are into mushrooms, this is the best thing for mushrooms of the upper Midwest. This book has tons and tons and tons of pictures in it, as well as extensive descriptions. And it also includes the top toxic options, top toxic mushrooms as well. And it's very small, as you can see. So if you are a hiker, then you can carry this in your backpack when you're hiking. All right, my favorite book on foraging, which I use all the time, and this is actually my second book of it, and because I don't know what happened to the first one. So weird. Midwest Foraging. If you live in the Midwest of the United States, you need this book. The problem is the supply chain drama that's going on. It's very difficult to get your hands on a hard copy. If you can buy a hard copy of a book, I highly recommend that. You never know when your internet's going to go out. You never know when cell phone service is going to go down. You never know when your power's going to go out. And how can you use this information if you can't access it? So yes, paper copies are always more expensive, but they're gonna be there when the grid goes down, which is gonna happen at some point. Let's just be honest here. They've been warning about this for years in the mainstream news and on platforms like Vice and such. So here we go. Doc, right there. That is my primary medicine. Right there. And as you can see right there, it's a biennial. So the second year it produces leaves and seeds, and it is prolific in production of seeds. And you can take the seeds and make it into a flower. besides planting it, just throwing it everywhere. And it's a noxious weed. We need to use glyphosate on it, by golly. No, it's amazing. It's as far as quercetin content goes, it is the third as far as what's been studied. There are only 2 other plants in the world that are known to have more quercetin in it. So it is an incredible mast cell stabilizer. But this book, you need it. Also, it's applicable to Ontario, Canada, it says. So it's applicable to not just the Midwestern United States. And there are a lot of things that are across the United States that are available. So you can eat some weeds, gather your medicinal weeds. And this book, by the way, I don't remember how much it was when I bought it. It says $24.95. I'm pretty sure I didn't pay that much. It paid for itself as far as medicine goes within a month, I think, because there are a number of things that I was able to identify. If you can't get your hands on that, which if you can get your hands on that, then I recommend it. Or if it's just not relevant to you, which is possible. This book here, Edible Wild Plants. This is a North American field guide to over 200 natural foods. So there's a lot in this. And if you're into prepping, which we're not, and you have a bug out bag, which we don't, then this would be a book to put in there because it's for North America in general. It does have good descriptions. It does talk about poisonous lookalikes, related edible species, and it has actual pictures as well, which I like. I'm not a fan of the foraging books that just have illustrations. I'm one of those people, I need the picture. Show me the picture. I can't understand it without the picture. All right, so sorry about the drama there. Also, this one here, what I do like about this book is that it shows right there. It shows the area in which it grows for everything. And it also lists some toxic wild plants that you want to avoid as well. So this is valuable. I do recommend this book. Lastly, if you can't get either one of those books, this is also a good one. Foraging for Survival. Edible Wild Plants of North America. Again, this is for North America. I'm sorry. This is where I live. I don't mean to be ethnocentric, but this is where I live. And so I don't buy books and use them for edible, forageable plants of Asia or Europe because I don't live there and I can't put that into practice. So sorry, that's that. But it's got lots of information in it as well. For example, here's about stinging nettle. And stinging nettle also is an amazing, ironically, stinging nettle, another noxious weed, which, by the way, I planted on our property, is an amazing mast cell stabilizer as well. I have an article up on our website with natural mast cell stabilizers if you want to check them out, because there's a lot of them. It addresses dandelions and trees and chickweed and all sorts of other things. And it does have pictures, but the pictures are smaller. However, they are quality pictures. So I do recommend the book as well. That actually covers our ginormous stack of books and the few websites that I wanted to share as well. Homesteading, permaculture, gardening. I know. Another a good source for gardening information is MI Gardener. They have a YouTube channel and they also sell seeds on their website. I've had mostly good results from their seeds, but there's some seeds that I got that I don't know, they must have been the wrong seeds, the wrong plant, or they crossed with a weird plant or something because I didn't get at all what I was supposed to get when the plant grew. I don't even know what it was that grew because it was like an alien plant. So I don't know. It was very strange. But that's also, it's a free source of information. I don't remember the name of the guy, and we are not MI Gardener affiliates, so we do not profit from that. So hopefully this has been helpful in sharing this massive amount of information with you, and it helps you to get started on whatever you're looking at starting with. My advice is to start small and build yourself up from that. There's a quote from somebody somewhere that basically says that it's much better to manage a small garden very well than to manage a huge area poorly. And I can attest to that and agree with that. So start with, a few pots on your porch and branch out from that. If you are into or considering livestock, if you start with chickens, chickens are called the gateway animal as in regards to livestock. But again, for reasons that I previously shared, I don't actually recommend getting chickens right now and starting with chickens, because I believe that if you do so, it is only a matter of time before you won't be able to have them anymore. And this is just the world in which we're living in. And so the more you can do with plants, and also as far as foraging, finding weeds goes, it's possible that likely that gardening is going to be illegal at some point in, I can't remember what European country, maybe it was I don't know if it was Europe or Eastern Europe. It wasn't Russia, but there's at least one country that in the past 2 years, seed saving has been made illegal. And so isn't that ridiculous? Saving your own seeds has been made illegal. And so that country is 100% owned by by big agriculture, by the seed companies that sell GMO seeds. Because if you look into what occurs in the United States and has occurred in the United States with farmers who didn't plant GMO seeds, but their neighbors' GMO seeds migrated onto their property and they got their pants sued off of them by Monsanto. It's pretty crazy out there. All right, but hopefully this information will empower you. Don't embrace analysis paralysis, which basically means, you're just thinking and thinking and thinking things through so much and freaking out. Oh, I don't want to make a mistake. What if I screw up? What if I make a mistake? Then I won't get anything for my tomato plant this year if I do things wrong. Just do something. Don't analyze things to smithereens. Just try something, see if it works. If it doesn't work, then you learn something from it, and that's valuable. And also you got free gardening therapy out of it too. And gardening is a whole lot cheaper than going to a therapist, and much more effective, I might add. Thank you so much for being here. Please give this video a thumbs up. Share it with somebody if you think it might help them. Have a most beautiful and blessed day.